Hey out there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours with Bob Ross. In this episode, I will discuss the 10,000 hour paradigm. But before I do, make sure to subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, subscribe, leave a rating and a comment. Let me know what you'd like for me to discuss. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Hit that thumbs up and leave a comment also about what you would like for me to discuss in future episodes. So the 10,000 hour rule, or the paradigm, is that if you have 10,000 hours of practice, then basically you become a master of whatever it is that you're working on. And the focus really is on deliberate practice. But before I go there, let me just bring up something. This concept was made popular more recently over the last few years by Malcolm Gladwell. Now, I've seen a lot of things out there with the 10,000 hour rule, and it's often attributed to Malcolm Gladwell in his book, Outliers. And the thing is that's not really where it comes from. In my hands here, I have a book, if you're watching on YouTube, of Peak. And this book is done by Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole. And in this book is where you find the studies that were done with this 10,000 hour rule and using deliberate practice. So the concept is that if you are going to work on something and you're going to have an extended period of time of doing it, it has to be deliberate practice. So two of the things that a lot of people seem to gloss over or tend to forget is one, this is not a Malcolm Gladwell concept. Number two is that they take just the idea of 10,000 hours and in a haphazard way just throw it out and say, oh, well, it's just 10,000 hours. And as long as you're working on something for 10,000 hours, for example, if I were to pick up my guitar today, if I just started playing guitar today and I played it for 10,000 hours, then at the end of that 10,000 hour cycle, going all the way to the end, that I would have the skills needed, or I would be really good at what it is that I do. So the problem is that, let's use a real world example right now. Real world example of, let's say, golf. Now, I'm not much one for golf, but maybe you're into golf. So let's say that you get into golf and you want to get better at it. So you go out and do all the things that you need to do. You buy the equipment. I'm not that familiar on all the nitty gritty of what it is that you need to acquire, but let's say you got the basics of what you need in order to go out and just start playing golf. And in some respects, you look at it as kind of like a hobby. So you start to play, and let's say you have the ability to play, I don't know, maybe 18 holes once a week. And maybe you take some time to go to a driving range or something during the week. And so what happens is that at the moment that you start, that you're starting to begin this process, what you start to notice is probably you are improving. You put in some time and then you get this little curve, it starts to go up, the time is going through, you're getting a little bit better, and then you start to notice that you plateau. So then you take a little bit more time and let's say you play, maybe a couple times a week, 18 holes or maybe multiple 9 holes, and you go to a driving range some, and you start to notice maybe a little bit more improvement. But as the years progress on, you notice that you're not really getting any better at all. You've plateaued at that point and you continue to go through the process, and maybe you start to think, well, if I just put in, more time, more hours of just going out and just doing, then I'll get better. The problem is that when you go through this process of just haphazardly playing or just doing whatever is at your whim to do and just go through the same motions every single time you play, you're going to notice that you're not going to get any better at all. You have to have this process of skill acquisition where you're pulling in things that you need, the skills needed to enhance your ability to play better and reach a higher level. And if you don't focus on the skill acquisition and isolating out these particular elements, breaking them down, and having very deliberate practice on what it is that you're trying to acquire, and then bring it back into an environment that either simulates real world, or maybe you go ahead and try to push it all the way into that setting of real world, here we go, then what you're going to find is that no improvement's going to be made. So you have to take the time to acquire these skills, implement them, break them down into the smallest little component that you need to in order to understand it. But then you implement it, and then you go towards acquiring more skills. So when you see somebody, regardless of what it is that they're doing, when you see somebody that has the ability to do something at a high level, what you're seeing is an accumulation of all these different skills that are all together, that have accumulated, and now they become one thing, or they seem like they're one particular thing as opposed to a whole bunch of separate things. So what you have to do, if you're going to take this concept of 10,000 hours, you have to understand that the deliberate practice component is essential, that's what you need to do. Going out and buying a guitar today and thinking that you're going to, play it for a few years and be amazing, it's probably not going to happen if all you do is pick up a few chords and strum from time to time whenever you feel like doing it. So that's one of the things that when I listen to conversations about this, and me being, I guess, somewhat of the nerd that I am, and trying to pull all these things and always learning, trying to understand and figuring out ways to apply that to my learning, or helping other students, helping others when it comes to acquiring skills for music or our abilities to play an instrument. When I hear these things and they're taken out of context in some ways, or they're just, kind of glossed over, then I think it's important to point out what it is that you really need to do. Now, I know I'm not the only one to address 10,000 hour rule, to point these things out. I know I'm not the only one that discusses deliberate practice. But if you've never heard it before, then this is your eye-opening moment. This is your chance to understand that it takes quite a bit of effort, and there's going to be some frustration in there. But if you just break it down in small components, acquire the skills, implement them, and have a very focused practice, then you will see the results after 10,000 hours. All right, everyone, I want to thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe there. Hit the notification bell. Also, leave a rating for the podcast, and make sure to leave a comment. If there's any particular thing that you would like for me to discuss in future episodes, I would be happy to know what that is. That way I can address it and maybe answer some questions. Also, I want to remind you that I do have a link to my lessons and courses on musiclessons.com in the description. So don't forget to check that out. And I'll catch you next time on Office Hours with Bob Ross.